Only blood relatives deserve the family fortune, my father roared, his face twisted with anger, as if the heavy oak shelves filled with leather-bound classics surrounding us in Grandmother Eliza's study were witnesses to his cruelty. Grandmother had been laid to rest only 3 days ago, and already the family was tearing apart over her will. "What are you talking about?" I managed, my voice barely rising above the tumultuous thudding of my heart. "Don't feign innocence, Julia. Your mother's little secret isn't so secret anymore." He paced the oriental rug, pausing to size up the formal portrait of Grandmother hanging over the fireplace. Eliza had an obsession with bloodlines. Once the lawyer confirms you've got no Wallace blood, you'll get nothing. I met his gaze unwaveringly, striving to maintain an even tone. "Do you swear to abide by this, that only blood relatives get Grandmother's inheritance?" "Absolutely," he declared, chin lifting with that familiar, imperious angle I'd witnessed countless times growing up. "I'll ensure the family legacy remains with the true Wallaces, not imposters. I'm Julia Wallace, 27 years old, and until moments ago, I believed Gregory Wallace was my biological father. Yet, as I stand in Grandmother's grand Georgian home in suburban Philadelphia, I apparently learn otherwise. My only desire is to receive the fair treatment Grandmother Eliza had intended in her will. In my last discussion with her about her estate plans, she specifically mentioned me her sole granddaughter. Who stands in my way? The very man whose approval I fruitlessly chased for decades. The very man always viewing me with barely concealed disdain. "You can attend the will reading next week," he continued disdainfully. "But don't expect anything. Harrison and I are already preparing to contest any provisions that include you." Harrison Reed has long been my father's ally and our family attorney. The mention of their conspiracy fills me with dread. "I'll be there," I murmured, determined. Grandmother desired my presence. "Sentimentality," he mocked. "Eliza always favored you blindly. Thankfully, the law values facts over feelings." As he left the room, I sank into Grandmother's leather chair, my fingers tracing the polished wood where she once penned countless letters, reviewed business ventures, and most recently documented her final wishes. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "We need to talk about your father tonight. Alone." Panic crept up my spine. If Gregory wasn't my father, who was? How could they hide the truth from me for 27 years? More troubling, why was it emerging now, just days after Grandmother's demise, and on the cusp of her wealth being dispensed? Whatever the truth, one thing became abundantly clear. The father I strove to please harbored a resentment more profound than I'd realized. Growing up as a Wallace meant navigating a realm of privilege attached to heavy expectations. The Wallace fortune, founded on pharmaceutical breakthroughs and clever investments, sustained the family through 3 prosperous generations. Gregory, being the eldest son, was the presumptive heir to much of the Wallaces' fortune. His younger brother Henry was the family outlier, brilliant, restless, and reluctant to conform to restrictive traditions. He left for Seattle to follow his medical research dreams, only returning for pivotal family occasions. Sparse memories of Uncle Henry are warm. His easy laughter, thoughtful gifts, the way he treated me as though my opinions had weight. My relationship with Gregory was the polar opposite. Gregory Wallace is a man who sees worth purely through achievement and stature. My brothers, Michael and Edward, have met his expectations effortlessly. Michael joined him in the family enterprise. Edward thrived in law school. But I consistently fell short. "She lacks the Wallace drive," he'd once said to my mother, assuming I couldn't hear him. "Too soft, too unfocused." Despite celebrating academic achievements and building a successful career in historic preservation, I never measured up to his standards. For years, I blamed sexism or unrealistic expectations, never suspecting a deeper reason for his aloofness. Grandmother Eliza was my sanctuary. She cherished my enthusiasm for history and art, encouraging me to pursue a life honoring my passions rather than family traditions. During my college years, Sunday afternoons at her estate became a ritual. Afternoons filled with tea, stories of family lore, and her personal tales of discreet rebellions against societal constraints faced by women in her era. "Remember, Julia," she often said, "a Wallace forges their own path." Her passing at age 86 was serene, yet left a void I struggled to navigate. Her absence meant losing my fiercest family advocate, making the loss even more profound. In the days following Grandma Eliza's funeral, I noticed subtle shifts in Gregory's demeanor, a meticulous scrutiny when I mingled with family members, whispered conversations with Harrison Reed abruptly ceasing as I entered a room. I shrugged it off as his way of processing grief. But now, these changes assumed a dark significance. The last time Grandma Eliza was alive, she gripped my hand with unexpected vigor, whispering, "Trust your instincts, Julia. Not all is as it seems." I attributed her enigmatic words to medication effects or fatigue. But now I wonder if she had been trying to prepare me for an ominous family storm. Leaving grandmother's study to meet my mother, a nagging feeling grew inside me that I was stepping into a family drama years in the making, with roots more complex than I could grasp. My mother chose a quaint cafe in a quiet city corner, one far enough from our intertwined lives where the Wallaces were just ordinary people. She seemed smaller somehow, her usual polished appearance slightly disheveled, eyes shadowed with sleepless worry. "I didn't want you finding out this way," she started, fingers nervously twirling her wedding band. "Your father's method was cruel and self-serving." "So it's true?" I asked, my voice low. "Gregory isn't my biological father?" She nodded, tears shimmering. "It's complicated, Julia, more than Gregory dramatizes." Over the next hour, my mother recounted a story that unraveled everything I thought I understood about my family. She and Henry, my uncle, were once entwined in love before Gregory came into the picture. They were young, driven, planning a future when Henry was offered a prestigious research fellowship in Seattle. "We agreed he should go," she explained. "It was an extraordinary chance he couldn't pass up." Their relationship stretched thin over the distance, and during a vulnerable moment, she grew close to Gregory, who had always admired her from afar. In that brief liaison, she realized her heart belonged to Henry. When she discovered her pregnancy, she believed without doubt it was Henry's child. The timing fit perfectly with his last visit. Her voice wavered. But Gregory insisted on it being his. Henry was already engaged by then, and I didn't want to disrupt his blossoming life. Gregory proposed swiftly, offering marriage as an agreeable solution. Eventually, the secret settled. Henry returned, wife in tow, but bore no children. His marriage dissolved, and he submerged himself in research, slowly detaching from family obligations. "Did Henry know?" I asked softly. "No," she admitted. "I couldn't bear complicating his life again." Each passing year made revealing the truth feel crueler. I reeled from the revelation. Every memory from childhood demanded re-examination. Gregory's coldness, Henry's warmth during his infrequent visits, grandmother Eliza's particular fondness for me. "Why expose it now?" I finally asked, feeling untethered. My mother's expression turned steely. "The will, dear. Gregory's obsessed with the Wallace fortune. He's worried Eliza left you a substantial share and he wants to discredit your claim. However, if I'm not a blood Wallace—" "But you are," she interrupted, firm but gentle. "James is your biological father, making you Eliza's granddaughter through blood nonetheless." The irony was striking. Gregory's attempt to undermine my inheritance by denying our biological link could inadvertently reinforce my legitimacy through an alternate family branch. "What should I do?" I asked, feeling unmoored. My mother reached for my hands, her grip warm and reassuring. "That choice rests with you, Julia. Justice, acknowledgement, or your rightful share of what Eliza intended." Answers eluded me. The betrayal was too fresh, its scope overwhelming. However, leaving the cafe, clarity emerged. I wouldn't let Gregory Wallace rewrite my history for his benefit. Proving my true lineage before the will reading loomed as essential, determining if such truths would aid or damage my standing within the tangled web of Wallace inheritance rules. The next morning, anxiety propelled my drive to Uncle Henry's apartment. I had called ahead, masking my real purpose under the pretense of discussing family matters related to the impending will reading. Seated in his snug living room, surrounded by stacks of scientific journals and travel mementos, I hesitated. How to articulate a question that would challenge his world as profoundly as mine? Henry's keen eyes watched me over his teacup. At 58, he was still sharply handsome, his dark eyes echoing the same I glimpsed in my mirror daily. "You seem troubled, Julia," he observed. "Is Gregory causing issues over Eliza's estate?" "It's more convoluted than that, Uncle," my voice faltering. "How does one ask if another man could be their father?" "Uncle Henry, were you and my mother—" His hand paused halfway to his lips, surprise shifting to wary caution. "Why dredge up ancient history?" "Because Gregory has informed me he isn't my biological father and leverages that to dispute my inheritance." Henry placed his cup aside with deliberate care. "Sounds like Gregory's calculated cruelty," he replied, studying my face with renewed intensity. "What has your mother revealed?" he quietly asked. So I shared the revelations about their past romance, observing as his expressions evolved. Nostalgia, pain, and finally, a glimmer of hope. "I never knew," he confessed solemnly. "Catherine never mentioned her pregnancy. By the time news arrived of her marrying, it was a closed chapter." He leaned forward, eyes searching mine. "Are you saying you believe I could be your father?" "Yes," I replied. "The timeline aligns as my mother described, but Gregory is intent on proving I lack Wallace blood and thereby barring my inheritance." Henry's gaze darkened. "Eliza's will specifically names you. Gregory can't just erase those provisions. However, he's contesting them, claiming they were made under the false assumption I was his biological daughter." Henry abruptly stood, pacing in the small room. "This is absurd. Even if you're not Gregory's child, you're still Eliza's grandchild if you're mine." He halted, eyeing me intently. "We need certainty a DNA test could resolve this." His pragmatic approach both relieved and terrified me. "Would you?" "Without hesitation," Henry affirmed. "I felt this connection I couldn't comprehend. If you are my daughter—" His voice cracked. "But first, we must establish the facts." We arranged expedited DNA testing through a private lab guaranteeing results within 3 days, just enough time before the will reading. As we submitted samples, anticipation mingled with dread in my stomach. The test results, regardless of outcome, would alter relationships with both Gregory and Henry irreversibly. As tests awaited processing, I gathered intel about Eliza's will, contacting her independent attorney, Bernard Chase, apart from Harrison Reed, the family lawyer. "I cannot divulge specifics before the official reading," Bernard explained in his office. "But I assure you, Eliza was lucid and precise about her intentions." "Did she know about my birth heritage?" I pressed. Bernard's neutral mask faltered for a moment. "I'm not at liberty to say, but Eliza was a perceptive woman." His non-answer was confirmation. Grandma suspected, perhaps even verified, that I was Henry's daughter, not Gregory's. My fleeting triumph dissolved into dread upon receiving a formal notice that evening. Harrison had petitioned the court for postponing the will reading to resolve identity questions among beneficiaries. Gregory was moving swiftly, leveraging legal connections to gain advantage. When I rang Bernard for clarity, news of his sudden hospitalization for pneumonia left me bereft of another ally. Coincidence was unlikely. Gregory was systematically dismantling my support and information sources. That night, my mother called, anxiety saturating her voice. "Gregory knows you met with Henry. Be cautious, Julia. When threatened, he turns dangerous." The DNA results arrived via encrypted email 2 days prior to the rescheduled will reading. Nervously, I opened the file, scanning the dense scientific language for clarity. Probability of paternity, 99.99998%. Henry was undeniably my biological father. I leaned back, emotions clashing within me, vindication, grief for a lost relationship, anger for years of deceit. The confirmation transformed distant possibility into solid reality. Gregory, who had always denied me, wasn't my father. I contacted Henry immediately. He received the news with quiet emotion. "Since you first asked, I suspected. You have Catherine's smile, but those eyes? They are Wallace eyes. My mother's eyes." We agreed to meet before the will reading to plan our strategy. Armed with DNA proof, I finally felt empowered against Gregory. or so I believed. That evening, Harrison Reed unexpectedly requested a meeting at his office. Despite wariness, curiosity led me there, alert to sudden interest from an ally of family opposition. The posh office of Mills and Associates, emblematic of old money and discretion, heightened my tension. Harrison's silver hair and immaculate presentation matched his polished courtesy that masked interest. Thanks for meeting, Julia. We must discuss some developments before the reading. Such as Gregory's paternity revelation? I countered, probing. Or your baseless petition delaying the will reading? His smile thinned. Actually, concerning your independent DNA testing with Henry, My breath caught. How could he know? We'd been meticulous. Gregory was upset about you probing. Harrison elaborated. He asked me to offer a proposal. He slid over a document, an agreement relinquishing estate claims for a $250,000 one-time payment. This is ludicrous, I retorted, pushing it back. Eliza's will included me, period. Yes, assuming you were Gregory's daughter. Now with this revelation, I'm still Henry's daughter. Thus, Eliza's blood granddaughter, I interjected. Blood relatives deserve the family fortune. Isn't that Gregory's mantra? Harrison's demeanor shifted subtly, revealing complexities below the surface. There are nuances beyond simple biology, Julia. Legal intricacies concerning the Wallace Trust supersede direct familial ties. What types of intricacies? I demanded. I can't disclose specifics before the official reading, but I strongly urge you to consider Gregory's offer. He's ready to fiercely defend family interests. The veiled threat hung in the air. Departing the office that evening, I felt more resolute than ever about maintaining my stance, though Harrison's confidence overawed me despite the apparently ironclad DNA results I possessed. The morning delivered a shocking revelation that further clouded my understanding. Henry called, his voice strained, barely containing his anger. Julia, I've discovered troubling news from an old family nurse. I clutched the phone tighter. What is it? Gregory isn't biologically a Wallace, he revealed. The room spun as his words registered. What? I gasped, heart pounding in disbelief. Apparently, the Wallaces adopted Gregory as an infant after several unsuccessful pregnancies and miscarriages. When Mother unexpectedly became pregnant with me, they chose to keep this adoption undisclosed, not wanting Gregory to feel less than a real son. The implications were staggering. By his own strict standards, Gregory couldn't be a rightful Wallace and, by extension, a legitimate claimant. Does he know? I asked weakly. I doubt it. The secret was taken to their graves by our parents. But Eliza likely knew. She and Mother were very close. That's why Harrison was confident, I realized, the weight of it settling in. There's something in the will or trust stipulating blood ties. I've been examining the original Wallace Trust. A specific clause mandates direct bloodline descent for major inheritance, Henry confirmed. Gregory's legal adoption secured his stake, but his own emphasis on biological legitimacy has potential to disqualify him. The irony nearly knocked me over. Gregory, targeting my blood connection, threatened his own standing unknowingly. What do we do? I asked. Henry grew contemplative. Our response hinges on what you want, Julia. Gregory's just rewards might not align with the family's best interests. I pondered carefully. Those who value blood purity should adhere strictly to their own criteria. Isn't that fair? The morning of the will reading dawned crisp with vibrantly colored autumn foliage illuminating Philadelphia. Grandmother's mansion was the gathering place, alive with anticipation and tension. I arrived early alongside Henry, our shared secret and undeclared weapon we were reluctant to wield. Harrison Reed, positioned at the head of the dining table with his leather portfolio wide open, controlled the proceedings as numerous Wallace relations filled the grand old room. Gregory occupied the seat opposite mine, exuding confidence, flanked by Michael and Edward, committed to supporting their father despite the uncertainty. Before we proceed, Harrison announced solemnly, we must address the sensitive issue regarding succession eligibility. Gregory straightened, casting me a triumphant look. Certain beneficiaries named in Eliza Wallace's will may not meet the bloodline qualifications stipulated by the original Wallace family trust, Harrison continued. Gregory interrupted. Hence the need to address Julia's situation. Recent evidence indicates she's not my biological child, thus lacks a legitimate claim. A wave of whispers rippled through the room. Henry and I exchanged surprised glances. Gregory had outflanked us, initiating the paternity issue preemptively. I possess DNA documentation, Gregory asserted, sliding a folder forward to Harrison, proving Julia lacks my biological lineage and therefore should be excluded from trust distribution. Heart racing, I questioned, May I know how you obtained my DNA for this test? Gregory's smile was frosty. Extracted from your water glass during our last family gathering? Surprisingly straightforward. That's illegal, Henry interjected. Unlawful DNA testing? Harrison cut him off. Irrelevant to the inheritance query. Regardless of collection legality, the science holds. Our carefully designed strategy crumbled. If Harrison accepted Gregory's dossier and dismissed collection legality, our opportunity to disclose our findings would vanish. There's further evidence pertinent to the bloodline discussion, I declared firmly, producing our own DNA results. This confirms James Wallace is my biological father. The room erupted in shock. Gregory's face turned red with rage as he stared at my mother, who surveyed him without flinching. This hardly alters anything, Harrison maintained after evaluating our proof meticulously. The trust requires direct Wallace lineage, passing from Eliza through her designated son, Gregory, to his legal progeny. James seized the opening. A review of the trust language seems necessary, he said, commanding attention. It requires bloodline descent from Harold Wallace, Eliza's father. This creates a significant dilemma. Harrison frowned. What are you implying? Gregory isn't a blood descendant, James declared. He was legally adopted, unknown to wide family circles but understood by Eliza. Deafening silence ensued as Gregory paled, disbelief morphing into denial. Absurd, he sputtered. Utter falsehood. We have adoption records, James calmly continued. Also, DNA evidence. If enforcing strict lineage rules, as Gregory insists, then as Eliza's only legal offspring, I, and Julia as my daughter, fulfill the requirements. Harrison looked torn, professional obligations clashing with loyalty to Gregory. He considered the documents with unnerving seriousness. You promised, Gregory yelled, desperation breaking his cold facade, his gaze boring into me. You vowed only blood relatives deserved wealth. No, I replied quietly. You made that promise yourself. I merely asked if you'd adhere to it. The poetic justice wasn't in the monetary gain, but in witnessing Gregory's carefully constructed life disintegrate because of his deep-seated hypocrisy. The unfolding drama bore the makings of a Greek tragedy. Gregory, his carefully orchestrated schemes unraveling, stormed out of the mansion amidst vehement threats of mounting legal challenges, threats everyone knew were destined to falter. Harrison, his professional integrity shredded, departed in Gregory's wake, leaving behind a reputation marred by attempts to bury the truth through dubious means. In the aftermath, Michael and Edward, their expressions reflective of disbelief, approached tentatively. Michael, the quieter and more sensitive, was first to speak. None of us saw this coming, he murmured. All those years, his treatment of you, it suddenly makes sense. Edward added with a sober nod, For what it's worth, you've always been our sister. This changes nothing. Their sincerity touched me deeply. They, too, had been shaped by Gregory's narrow worldview, and perhaps time could bridge the gaps of misunderstanding between us. Next, my mother approached, her expression a mix of relief and lingering apprehension. I should have told you everything sooner, she said, her voice broken by regret. I just didn't know how. I understand now, I replied softly. You were trying to protect me. But it was with James that I found my most profound conversations still awaited. We retired to grandmother's study, tracing our fingers over the well-loved books and mementos of a family history now redefined in our minds. What next? he asked, the years of missed opportunity hanging heavy in the air. Something new, I said simply. We can't reclaim lost time, but we can build something better onward. James smiled, a mirror image of my own, and I saw reflections of both grandmother and mother in the kindness of his eyes. I'd like that very much, he said warmly. The evening unfolded with earnest stories, shared experiences, and discoveries that breathed new life into our redefined bond. As our connection deepened, I felt Grandma's presence, a guiding force ensuring truth reigns. Her meticulous foresight freed me from enacting her will. Justice prevailed by its own virtue. Ultimately, Gregory's undoing wasn't by my acts, but his own faults revealed under discovery. He'd spent years singling me out as the family outsider, blind to the reality that he occupied that role himself. The outcome couldn't have been more fitting. My gaze shifted towards an unwritten future, a path illuminated by authenticity and genuine family ties. With James by my side, my rightful true inheritance was not gold nor legacy, but finding acceptance in my identity and a father who genuinely embraced my presence.